So I'm an easy person. I can admit actually when I make a mistake in this game, and this is probably one of them. What's going on, you guys? Slim here to talk to you guys about what actually is the real best deck in this format. The ADAMANCIPATOR deck, the I can't pronounce this deck. I just call it the Rock deck for short. If you guys are new here, consider subscribing, hit the notification bell. You guys will be notified whenever I upload. You'll also be notified whenever I stream over on Twitch. Links in the description. Come over there. We stream almost daily, a couple times a week at least. And yeah, it's just a really good time. But yeah, last video, you guys already know, we talked about Eldritch Invoked. We talked about how, you know, it won the last LCS, the Luxury Card Gaming Tournament Series. And we talked about how it was projected to be the best deck of the format since it won. However, if you looked at actual representation, you would see that the Rock deck, the ADAMANCIPATOR deck, actually did have way more representation. And I did admit that when I made that video. I didn't make that video to say that Eldritch Invoked was the best deck. It was clear to say that it was definitely one of the best, but probably not the best. And it was also to touch upon a deck that had just won a tournament. This deck, however, did come second. Not this exact build. This was actually, I had to decide which build I wanted to actually show off in the video, so I decided to show this one. This was actually Alex Bergeron's build. He actually went 8-0, and I think that was the reason why I chose this build to profile over the European builds that I saw. The differences in the builds is that some of them played like some different card choices. They didn't main deck Dark Ruler no more, etc, etc. They didn't play stuff like Destruction Sword and stuff like that, but we'll talk about all that in this video. But one thing I wanted to say is that yeah, I was definitely wrong in, I guess, the way the video came forward, that I was saying Eldritch Invoked was the best deck, when in fact this deck, the Rock deck, was clearly better, and it's still showing to be the best deck, one of the most represented decks, not only on Dueling Book, but also here on Project Ignis. You guys have seen in a lot of the streams that I play against this deck a lot. I haven't played against like these exact builds, but I have played against the builds that main deck Dark Ruler no more, and then just kind of build a board, and then you just kind of lose. It's pretty crazy. I have been able to beat this deck. I've gone, I want to say, maybe 50-50 with this deck with Mech Knight Invoked. It just really depends like what their ending board is, like what they start with, what they end with. And one thing I'll talk about this deck, like why I feel this is definitely the best deck of the format, is how flawlessly it plays through Nibiru. Like, I've watched a lot of replays, I've watched a lot of players, you know, talk about this deck, talk about their profiles, and they just talked about how easily this deck plays around Nibiru. It's kind of crazy. You know, you Nibiru them, right? You give them a Rock token, and then they're able to work with that token and just keep going, which is absolutely insane. I've watched them extend, you know, since they have another monster, since it's a Rock, they're able to summon their guys, they're able to, you know, link off, they're able to synchro, they're able to still do a bunch of stuff. They go into Granite, they search Block Dragon, they use Block Dragon to help link, and it's just absolutely insane. I think that this deck definitely has proven why it's one of the best decks. It's very consistent. That's one thing that I think always is one of the forefront, like, most important things for a best deck of the format, is that you need to have a very consistent deck, and this deck definitely is consistent. Certain builds play different things, like cards like Dinotherium are just kind of choices for certain players. They play it because, you know, it just becomes a free starter, a free extender. It's also a Wind Engrave, which does come up sometimes with some of these guys, which is actually pretty crazy because it really doesn't happen that much, but having a Wind in the Grave for this one is crazy, so I like that a lot. That does come up, so that's very, very cool. But the fact that you can just extend through just so many things, you can play through so many hand traps with this deck, that is nuts. And I really like how this deck chooses to play. So I'm not going to really go over like the main deck. Like, as you guys can see, of course you play you play all the tuners, you play the go engines. I've seen different ratios on this. I've seen multiple copies, you know, more copies of Gigas, more copies of Gloves. It just really depends. I've seen, you know, of course the 1-up, that's a huge brick, but you still play it because the card's crazy. You play that, and you still, of course, you know, can play the Go Giant if you want. Gigantus, Block Dragon. Now, the biggest thing with Block Dragons, I've heard people say, you know, you want to play more copies of this. So people have gone back and forth. I've seen some lists. I know the second place list actually played 3 copies of this with a Foolish Burial, and it was because this card actually really is insane. If you link away this card, get this card off the board, you get a +3. Like, this card can, I've heard them say, can be like a +10 at some point in the game, which, I mean, it's just mind-boggling by itself. So obviously Block Dragon is one of the forefront, like, best cards in the deck. It could just do so much. Setting this up with IP Masquerena to make Appaloosa on your opponent's turn and get a Search 3 is ridiculous. I've watched a lot of the replays. I've watched Lithium's replays. I've watched a lot of other channels' replays, and it honestly is just it's just absolutely crazy just how much power this deck has, how much consistency it has, and how it just has a very, very good grind game, which I really, really like about this deck. Going first, it puts up a crazy board. I've seen a lot of standard boards that end on like Dweller. They end on sometimes they end on Drag Guide, or they end on Boral Savage. They end on a lot of things, also an Appaloosa or a IP Masquerena that climbs into that. You can also play things like Union Carrier, and you can equip the Destruction Sword, locking your opponent out of the extra deck, which is absolutely crazy. You literally can just Dark Ruler them, break their board, set up that combo, and you just automatically win. That's why people choose to play Dark Ruler no more. I think it's just a very well-rounded deck that can just do so many things. Like I said, it's very consistent. Being able to play cards, of course, like Needle Fiber, now that we have it, and being able to utilize, your tuners, like being able to utilize Jet Synchron, being able to utilize your O-Lion. There are just so many great combos you can do. You also have the freedom to play the Mecha Phantom Beast Link, which not many decks can. So being able to play this is also an excellent extender for this deck. It just does so many things. It's also wind. Again, that synergy comes up, whereas it normally wouldn't come up. But I think the deck has really proven why it's such just an absolute behemoth of a deck. It also has an old school card, Quackimiru Guardian. For a lot of you who don't know this, this has become like a staple in the deck. Some people go as far as to max out 3 copies of it. Basically, what you do is you can keep it on the board. You just reveal a rock monster in your hand. When a monster effect is activated, you tribute this card and negate the activation, destroy that monster. This helps you play around this Nibiru. It helps you play around any hand trap, and it's just crazy. Being able to hit this off of your Adamon monsters is nuts. I think that in and of itself is crazy. You can play extra extenders like the Dolce card. Like, there are just so many things this deck does right that I think has really just elevated it to be like the most represented deck and the most played deck, and it's only losing in the finals, I think is pretty crazy. I think that just how you play the deck is very important. I think it has a very flexible side deck as well. Siding Nibiru, obviously, you can search it in your deck, which is crazy, so that's another great part about this deck. This side deck in particular focused heavily on back row decks, taking out Eldritch cards, stuff like that. A pointer is extremely strong. You guys already know this. And just being able to stop back row decks. But this deck can just play through everything. And I think, again, that's why it warrants it to be one of the best decks of the format. You guys can look around on YouTube, and you guys will see all the replays, all the matches, all the stuff that this deck has done, and just the boards it can put out. It's crazy to just think that, with you're just starting off with your guys, obviously you have to get lucky on your, your reveals off the top of your deck. But when your deck is this consistent, there's no reason why you won't at least hit a couple of them. They've talked about how opening Seeker, Seeker I think plus Block Dragon can just be crazy combos. You can just do so many crazy things. Doki Doki being one of those weird cards that ends up becoming one of your best one of your best special summons in your deck. The fact that you literally just discard a rock monster special summon, it is nuts. And then being able to bring up another card is ridiculous. I think this card really elevates the deck as well. All these extenders just do so much, and the fact that they all synergize with each other in some way. If you notice that, not only are they earth or they're rock, or they set up the elements in the grave, having wind is crazy, and you just manipulate your grave however you want. The Go-Go-Go's add that extra extender play, and yes, you give up your battle phase, but it does not matter. Being able to just spin out all your guys is important. The fact that you can play Dweller Turbo is nuts. The fact that you can next turn go into Boral Sword and just kill your opponent is nuts. Especially with Needle Fiber coming out, that really did change his deck as well. It added another layer to it, which was necessary. And I just noticed, overall, playing against this deck, playing with this deck, this is definitely one of the best decks of the format, if not the best decks of the format. And I think we're going to continue to see. I know this weekend there's another PPG or something else coming up at the end of the month, around the time that would have been YCS Pasadena. There's going to be another LCS. So we'll definitely see this deck's impact in the format. The fact that, Eternity Code is also out. I've heard things about, being able to play Link Ross, being able to play some of the new cards that come out in that set is going to change his deck even more. And I think we're going to see a lot more people picking up this deck, innovating this deck. And what's crazy is just for the first couple versions of this deck, you guys already know it won the first PPG in Cody Angelov's hands, and then it won is able to win some of the other tournaments. It's just absolutely crazy, what this deck can do and what it'll continue to do in the format. Now, granted, we don't have a real, physical format right now, but we already know that if we did, this would be the deck to be played. People say don't look at online tournaments, but I say that's completely false. I think the online tournaments give you the information you need to realize that, okay, if, say, tomorrow everything lifts, say tomorrow we go back to regular Yu-Gi-Oh! And everyone can go play in an event, you're going to see this deck heavily represented, and it's going to be something that you need to prepare for. There's plenty of videos videos that tell you how to counter this deck, but also you have to remember it's easily one of the most consistent decks, one of the best decks of the format, and it's going to continue to, you know, shape itself and continue to, you know, evolve as the format continues, as it gets more support, as it gets other cards indirectly. It's going to just really just, you know, kind of shake up the format and continue to prove why it's the best deck of the format. But yeah, that was today's video, you guys, talking about why I feel let's see if we can pronounce this, why the ADAMANCIPATOR deck is the best deck of the format. Next to Eldritch, any version of Eldritch, I feel that those two decks are the best decks, the most represented decks, but this clearly is the front runner. I think we're going to see a lot of great things from this deck. I just wanted to showcase this list for you guys. I like this list a lot. This is the list I was testing myself, and there are plenty of other lists you guys can check out, ones that play multiple block dragons, ones that play different ratios of the Go-Go-Go's and Do-Do-Dos, so there's a lot of things you guys can check out. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about that. I think this is going to shape up to be one of the best, you know, and continue to be one of the best decks of the format, and you guys just always need to be prepared. But yeah, that's all I got to say, you guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, what you think about this deck. If you're playing this deck yourself, how do you like it? What has it done for you? Do you know, what are like innovations you made with it? And you know, how much better do you think it'll get when Eternity Code, you know, comes to us here in the TCG? You know, besides Europe having it, you know, it'll come here to us soon, and then you'll be able to add more spice to it. So I think the deck has a lot of potential, and I see a lot happening in the future. But yeah, that's all I got to say, you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. Give it a thumbs up. I'll see you guys later. Thank you for watching.